So this is going to be a Bow Pro Guide, or I guess you could call it a Bro Guide for short. But Bow is a very versatile brawler, and he's not actually used that much competitively, but I think he can be very, very good if you have a lot of practice. So let's talk about some basic attacking tips. Bow shoots 3 shots, each at an 8 1/3 tile range. Each of those shots are going to do 728 damage, so that adds up to a total of 2,184 damage. But you might be saying you really rarely hit all 3 shots, but that's actually not true. There is a way that you can pretty consistently hit all 3 shots on any opponent. So the main skill cap with Bow comes from moving while shooting, and you want to strafe side to side while you're shooting, and this is going to change the way that your arrows spread out. And so what you kind of want to do is make them spread out less. That way they clump up together into one specific spot, so that way you're sort of acting like a piper where you have a bunch of damage just condensed all into one single shot. And to do this, all you really have to do is move clockwise comparatively to where you're shooting your shots. So if you just imagine where your shots are going as a hand on a clock and where they end up is the center of that clock, you want to be moving clockwise around there if you want your shots to clump up together and basically occupy the same space. And just one arrow has a range of about 1 2/3 tiles, and all 3 of them together are going to be between 3 and 4 tiles typically. But then once you move clockwise, this range reduces to just 2 1/3 tiles, which is usually enough to all hit the same exact target. So if you basically only attack this way, you're sort of serving a purpose similar to Piper, where you have to aim very specifically, but when you do hit your shots, it deals a lot of damage. But the thing is, you don't only have to play that way. If you actually go in the counterclockwise direction, your arrows are going to spread out more than normal, and the range is actually going to increase almost 5 tiles that it spreads out. And this type of shot is also super useful in a lot of different situations. Whenever there are people hiding in grass and you have no idea where they are, if you just move counterclockwise while shooting, you'll have a huge spread of your arrows, and that'll cover a huge amount of ground, so it will allow you to clear the grass a lot more easily. And also there are just a lot of times when generally you just want to cover a lot more area if there are multiple people that you're trying to aim at, or they're at low health, then this spread attack is always a possible option that you can go for. So essentially what your strategy should be with Bow is that you want to attack single targets if you're doing like a 1v1 with those high damage shots, and you will just want to get practice aiming while strafing and trying to hit all 3 shots at the same time on a single target. And then once they get low and they're trying to run away or something like that, then if they only need 2 hits left to die, then you can just use a normal attack without strafing at all, and then they'll just be normally grouped up, and typically you can hit 1 or 2 shots guaranteed this way as long as you aim it right. But since they're less grouped up, it's easier to aim. And if they only need 1 hit, then definitely just use a spread attack. It'll cover a huge amount of area, and it'll basically be guaranteed to hit them, and since you only need that 1 hit, it doesn't really matter how much damage you're doing. So because of all these different options, it makes Bow very, very good, because you can choose to be high damage and somewhat inconsistent with your shots, or you can choose to be very consistent and just deal a tiny amount of damage, and you can adjust for however the battle is going. And then for things like enemies that are like really close to you, or just stationary targets like showdown boxes or the heist safe or the Ike turret, you can literally just auto aim while doing the clockwise strafing like I was talking about, and then you'll get the high damage shot off and you won't really have to aim at all. So for those certain things, then Bow, you just get guaranteed 2100 damage every time you attack. And actually another quick tip is that for showdown boxes that are like next to each other, you can stand in the middle of them and then fire using your splash damage, and you can actually hit up to 5 boxes at once doing this. And I made a whole separate video about that, of how to destroy showdown boxes optimally for each brawler, so you can go watch that if you want. And now let's talk about his super. So it throws 3 different mines, and the formation of these mines is actually in the exact same formation as Tick's main attack. So if you're familiar with Tick, then he throws his mines in the exact same way. I also made a video about that if you want to see the geometry of how Tick's attack works. But each of these mines deal 16 damage when they explode, and they're going to destroy walls, so they're very good to throw near like the goal in Brawl Ball, so that way you can break that open and make it easier to score, or it's just good to force your opponents out of cover in any certain map like bounty or gem grab, because once you throw your mines in their main cover, they really can't do anything. If they want to use that cover, they're gonna have to trip the mines, but once they trip the mines, then that cover is no longer there, it just gets broken. And it's also very good for covering choke points. If there is really only one way your opponents can get to you, you throw the mines in that area, and then they're gonna have to really reroute and take a much longer path if they want to get to you, and that can just stall for time. That can allow your teammates to come in and get an opportunity to shoot them. So overall, the super is very, very useful and you also want to make sure that you practice with optimal placement for that as well. And now talking about his star powers, Circling Eagle is a very, very good star power, but the main drawback is that it is very situational, so you basically just want to make sure that you're choosing which star power you want to use before you go into every different map, because it completely changes for bow. And obviously Circling Eagle is going to be good when there's maps with a lot of grass, and even if there's not as much grass, a lot of times it can still be the better star power because it just gives you such a huge advantage when you can see your opponents before they can see you. And if you have like a teammate with you or your whole team with you and you see any one of your opponents, you're going to be able to unload pretty much all of your shots from your entire team onto that opponent before they even realize that you're attacking them. And that huge advantage you really can't get with anything else. Then obviously the prime maps for Circling Eagle would be something like Snake Prairie or Cavern Churn, where it's almost entirely grass. And in Snake Prairie, you really got to make sure that everyone stays near the bow on your team, because if you're not near a bow, then you're going to be at a huge disadvantage, because it's basically guaranteed that both teams are going to have a bow. And if you're off on your own, away from your own team's bow, and you run into the other team, they're going to easily kill you. There's literally no possible way you can win that when they can unload all their attacks before you even realize they're attacking you. Unless you have like Terra's gadget activated or something, it's always best to make sure you stay near your own bow and let him go up first and scout out the area, and just make sure you're on an even playing field with your opponents, because you never want to be in the situation where they have that extra sight and you don't. And then the other star power, Snare a Bear, is actually also a very good option in a lot of situations. Usually you just want to use this when Circling Eagle isn't going to be very useful, and it's just really good because once your opponents trip your mines and they get stunned, you basically get a free kill on them because they're stunned for a pretty decent amount of time, and as long as you don't immediately die right before they get stunned, you should be able to get enough damage off on them, because once they're stunned, they're a stationary target. And so you can just use what I was talking about before. You auto aim and then strafe clockwise, and then you're gonna hit all 3 of your arrows guaranteed, and that's 2100 damage with just one shot, and you're already dealing 2000 damage from the mine itself, so it's basically a free kill. And typically if you're running Snare Bear, you want to be a bit more aggressive with your mines. You don't necessarily want to use them as much to destroy things. You want to put them in places that are going to force your opponents to trip them as much as possible, because that's what's going to get you the kills. Sometimes it is still a better advantage just to throw it in their cover, just to deny them that cover. So don't change your strategy too much, but that is definitely something to think about. And then finally we can talk about Bow's gadget, which is the Super Totem. And this is a very, very useful gadget. Honestly, this is probably the only reason why Bow saw play in the most recent monthly finals. And basically you just get to charge up your super. It takes a while, it takes about like 19 seconds, I think. But it is definitely very, very worth it, because if you think about it, if you just throw your gadget at the spawn, what are your opponents going to do? They have to come for you, because if they don't come for you, then no progress is being made if you're in something like Bounty, because no kills are being made. Except the thing is, if you were to not have that Super Totem, you would just be going in and it would be the same deal as before, except your entire team doesn't have all your supers charged up. So in that situation, the Super Totem provides virtually no drawback and just gives your entire team a free super, and you can do that 3 times per match, and it really forces your opponents to come after you at your spawn. And when you're at your spawn, that means you're going to be respawning right on top of them, so it's going to be very, very difficult for them to stay alive, and it puts your opponent into a really bad situation if they don't also have a bow. So strongly recommend buying that gadget if you do see it in the shop. I don't quite have it yet, but I'm very excited once I do finally get that. But that's going to be it for this video, guys. I hope you enjoyed. Make sure to leave a like and a comment down below if you did, and don't forget to subscribe to see more content like this. But that was it for today, guys, so see you later.